I'm glad I'm not in a serious relationship right now because I didn't have all the love that I needed to give myself before, and now I'm just pouring into me. One time I was on a date with this guy and I told him that I was married to myself, and he said, I do not want to be in a relationship with someone who is married to themselves. So, he thought I was crazy, and that's okay. Next.
Next. We're back talking about self-marriage, a trend that many say promotes self-love and empowerment. Sasha says the younger generation is approaching relationships in a different way. But my next guest says that's one of the biggest problems in America today. Joining us virtually is the director of the National Marriage Project and professor of sociology at the University of Virginia, Brad Wilcox. Now, Brad is also the author of the upcoming book, Get Married: Why Americans Must Defy the Elites, Forge Strong Families, and Save Civilization, and has been studying marriage for over 20 years. Brad, thanks for taking time to talk to us today.
It's good to be here today, Dr. Bill.
We do know, in looking at certainly the young generation today, they're dating later in life. They're getting married less than previous generations. Why do you think that's true?
Well, I think we have this sort of idea out there today that marriage is about basically, a capstone, and you've got to get all your ducks in a row in terms of, your career, your relationship, and everything else. And so folks are kind of postponing marriage in many cases, postponing kind of the pursuit of marriage in many cases. I think also it's the case, too, that a lot of folks have very high expectations for, a spouse. And so it makes it harder to find someone who would kind of meet the bar for them in this cultural context. And the final thing that I would say is we're seeing more challenges with men. A lot of young men today are not working full time. They're not really kind of fully engaged in their relationships. They're spending too much time on the Xbox. And so there's a kind of a malaise among some young men that also, I think, is part and parcel of why we're seeing this dramatic retreat from marriage unfolding in American life today.
And you say that it's really, the institution of marriage has really collapsed since the 70s. How much?
So the marriage rate's fallen by 60% since 1970. And this is, we're kind of in uncharted territory here with low marriage rates and low fertility rates as well here.
60% since the 70s?
Yes, that's correct. And we're projecting kind of going forward that a record share of young adults today, about 1/3, will never marry. And again, this is sort of record territory for the U.S.
Yeah, I've read some studies about this, and a lot are saying they're waiting till things get fixed, till society gets fixed, things get worked out. Like, I don't want to bring a child into a world that's this messed up. Isn't it always going to be messed up?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think there's really no perfect time to put a ring on it and to go ahead with having kids. There's always going to be some kind of economic or military or today environmental challenge facing us. And it's, I think for most of us, that the best thing we can do is to find a partner and to create a life together. And that's what marriage is all about.
And you say people who are married are markedly happier, less lonely, more likely to be prosperous?
Yeah, what we see in the data is that folks who are married are about twice as likely to be very happy. They're about half as likely to be lonely. And as they kind of move through life, they're more kind of prosperous on average in the moment. And as they head into retirement, for instance, they have about 10 times the assets as their fellow Americans who are single or divorced and living on their own. So just kind of huge differences when it comes to the social and the emotional and the financial well-being of married Americans versus single Americans today.
Do married men live longer?
They do. I mean, some would put it at 8 or 9 years in terms of if you kind of get married and stay married in your your 20s or early 30s. It's about what we would argue about sort of the equivalent of smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, but kind of in the opposite direction.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.